Dr. Naomi Long Madgett, to present her with the award today for the Great Lakes Black Authors Expo 2019, Alice Dunbar Nelson Literary Award winner.
Talking me through my own poetry, she would ask me what I was trying to say. And then when I would begin to explain, it was like, are you listening to yourself? Because what you're explaining is not on the page. And then she said to me, when people read your book, you will not be there to explain what you meant. And that has stuck with me ever since.
So, Dr. Madgett, you have a long history with writing and poetry, and before you even started your own publishing company, let's talk about how you got into writing poetry and the people you've come across in your path in all these years.
Well, I want to say what Brother Okada said about editing. I would not change anything without the author's permission unless it was an unintentional grammatical error. But I would say, is this the word you meant? And a lot of the poets that Lotus Press published were very grateful, as he is, for the questions I raised. But if they said, no, that's the way I want to say it, then I would leave it alone. But I started writing very early. I remember a book that my father let me read, Pearls from Many Seas, and I would automatically go to the poetry. And I had two brothers, and all the kids in the neighborhood were boys. And they didn't want a little girl tagging around after them. So I was very lonely, but when I was in third grade, one of my aunts came to live with us and brought her daughter, who was about 18 months older than I, and for once I had a girl to play with. So when they left after 2 years, I was back to the way I was, and so I wrote this poem. If anybody has a little playmate, will you spare her for me? I am really lonely as a child can be. I used to have some playmates, but they all went away. So don't forget I'm lonely and I want to play.
Oh my gosh.
And my first poem was published in the Orange Daily Courier in the Poets' Corner. And my brother was influential in getting it published there. And my first book was published when we moved to St. Louis. The black community was very supporting of anybody who was doing anything artistically. So I was doing a lot of poetry readings, as Robert was doing a lot of concerts, Robert McFerrin. And it was there that I met Langston Hughes for the first time. There's a women's literary club that had invited him to come and speak. My mother was not a member, but they knew that I was writing poetry, so they invited both of us. And I still have the signed copy of A New Song, his most recent book, that he gave to me. And I remember his saying, don't ever pay to get your poems published. So, I mean, anybody can publish poetry if they pay to do it. So the next time I saw him, I was at Virginia State, and he was supposed to do a reading in the evening, and I belonged to a little literary group, and we met with him earlier in the day, and I had a typed loose leaf notebook of poems, and I asked him if he would please look at one of two of those and let me know what he thought. So that evening he said, I'll give it back to you after the reading. So when he was reading his own poetry, he read several of my poems.
Wow.
And told the audience, these poems were written by one of your fellow students, and my head got way big. And
Wow.
so when I went to the stage to collect the notebook, he saw me standing on the edge, and he left the people he was talking to and came over and brought me that. And when I looked at it, he had gone through the whole collection and penciled comments on some of the pages. And I immediately covered what he wrote
Wow.
in Scotch tape so it wouldn't get erased.
Exactly, yeah.
And that book is now at the special, among my other papers, at the Special Collections Library at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor.
Wonderful.
I have always tried to be the person that Langston Hughes was. He was not at all full of himself, like one now deceased female poet who I did not respect at all. But he was always encouraging of younger poets. And when at one of these house parties in Detroit, he was asked to read, and he insisted that the two poets who were there read some of their own work. And he was just so down to earth. If he were to come in the room now in 5 minutes, you'd be calling him Lang.
Wow.
He was just down to earth and just a wonderful human being.
Wow.
And Gwendolyn Brooks was also that kind of person. But I also met Arna Bontom at a conference at the University of Iowa. And I knew Robert Hayden very well. I knew Gwendolyn Brooks. I knew a lot of the contemporary poets. But when my second book came out, One in the Many, you could count the number of books of poems by black authors that were being published on one hand. It was such an unusual event that I was asked to read in Philadelphia and a lot of other cities. But now there's so many black poets being published that I can't even recognize all of their names, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. That's
This is another East-West Street project.